So everyone, if anyone comes on right away, I'm just dropping an invite so that everybody can know. So if you're listening right now, I didn't see anybody on just yet, but if you are on, I'm currently just going through and uh, getting the link to drop into my Blue Sky and Twitter. All right. Hey there. I have one person. So I'm just doing some invitations to Blue Sky and Twitter right now. So uh, I'll be with you in just a second. All right. So hello. So hey. Oh, it's how do I say your name? Is it Malison? Like Allison with an M? Is that the correct way to say it? Um. Anyway, hello. Thanks for joining again. Um. All right. So I got it right. Is that like is that a like a screen name or is that your real name? Your given name? Okay. So today I wanted to talk about oh, it's your gamer name. Ah, that makes sense. So my today I wanted to talk about the media and the election and how the media played and was played in the outcome of the election. And I was thinking about this recently. I had a class. It was a great class when I was in college. I was a freshman. It was community college, and it was like my very first class. It was called How to Study, and it taught you how to study. And like a lot of people go through high school and they never learn really how to study. And there's actually some studying skills like how to leave notes in your textbook and how to take notes in class and how to study for a test. And it was really, really a helpful class. And the my teacher for that class, she said something. I can't remember what prompted it, but she was talking about how some teachers just make a habit out of failing everybody, or like they just refuse to give A's. And she said something that I thought was really smart. She said, uh, "the if one student fails a class, it's the student's fault. If every student fails the class, it's the teacher's fault." Because we as we have an obligation to learn. We have a what is being taught to us, but the teacher also has an obligation to teach. And I was thinking about this in terms of the election just now, and how now people are like discovering what tariffs do and how they work, and that if there's mass immigration or mass deportations of undocumented workers, that's going to have this devastating effect on food prices. And I mean, we're still just scratching the surface of this, but I think like these things are things that should have been uh, told and taught before the election happened. Why is it? Like I think somebody, I forget who, one person like went through and looked up all the articles now that are coming out on how food prices are going to go up if there's mass deportations. Found 40 different articles on this. And of the 40 articles, one was written before the election. And so it makes me think, like if nobody knew about this, like if you can say some people knew about it, but most people did not. And but if nobody knew about it, then that's the media's fault. Why wasn't the media letting people know? All right, I'm going to show your note up here, Malison. She says, I don't think it would have helped because only the Dems would have cared. And I think that, in the sense that the Dems would have cared and the MAGAs would not have cared. But I think there is a segment of the population that is neither Democrat nor MAGA. And I think the ones that are finding out now, just, how bad things can get, those are the ones that would have cared because they're the ones that were voting because prices were too high and because of inflation. And they blame Joe Biden on inflation. Even though, and that is another thing that where the media was complicit. Like they would say over and over again that, they would talk about inflation a lot. And every time they would talk about inflation, they would talk about how it was bad for the Democrats. And so if you're just got the news on that in the background, you're not a really you're not a very curious news person. You're just barely know what's going on. The prices are going up. Media saying, what you're hearing the media say is that it's Joe Biden's fault because you're hearing them say that people are blaming it on Joe Biden. And they're blaming it on Joe Biden because you keep telling them that people are blaming it on Joe Biden. So it becomes this cyclical thing where it was Joe Biden's fault that there was inflation, when actually it wasn't really Joe Biden's fault. There were a number of factors that went into inflation. There was like some things were just incidental, like the price of eggs being high was because there was an avian flu that wiped out half the egg-laying population. And so until they could, hatch, hatch new chickens and grow them up to the point where they were raised, laying eggs again, there was just an egg shortage. So nothing you can do about that. Doesn't matter who's president. You could have had Chicken Little or Foghorn Leghorn be president. And it wouldn't have made a difference. It wasn't like Joe Biden had some control over the avian flu. There was, like the baby formula thing where they shut down the factory because there was, there was an infection there, and it was the one factory that made like most of the baby formula in the country. Oh, that's funny. This is my green coffee cup. And I've got the green background, so it looks like I'm not drinking anything. Anyway, or it looks like an invisible coffee cup, doesn't it? So Malison, okay. Bye, Malison. Hope your plumber doesn't overcharge you. Hi, Theater Doc. Yeah, Ghost Coffee. So anyway, the getting back to like the prices, there were other factors that were involved. There was the supply chain issues, which again, those dominoes were already falling before Donald Trump, or before Donald Trump even left office or Joe Biden took office. And and then coupled with the with the strike in the in the shipping yards and the all of these things just com added up and uh they're none of them were really, like Joe Biden's fault. There was some stuff that you could say was Joe Biden's fault, which was the stimulus package accounted for some of the inflation. And how much of that inflation is depends on who you talk to, or who you read. But even if you were to take like the highest, most damaging critique is I think it was the Heritage Foundation blamed 40% of it on Joe Biden. So that would be like 3 points. If you're talking about 9% inflation, then 3.6%, it's Joe Biden's fault. And when you look at, the whole thing with stimulus spending is, along with stimulus spending, you get stimulus, and which is why they call it stimulus spending. That's what brought us out of the recession that Donald Trump started, and it's why our economy recovered so quickly. It's why we were at nearly full employment within 6 months, because we weren't supposed to be there until like this year. We weren't even supposed to be there. We were supposed to be down to 6% this year, according to the CBO projections in 2020. So, like, the economy recovered so much more quickly than we thought it would, and that was because of Joe Biden. And the way the media characterized it is just, well, that's just recovery. That's just bouncing back from the pandemic, as though there was just this automatic thing that was going to happen. Like that was preordained. That no matter what happened, no matter what anyone did, all of this was going to happen. And that's not really logically what happened. It's not historically what happened. And it's taking away credit from what Joe Biden did. But and even when you talk about Joe Biden's jobs that were created, and they would dismiss the jobs that were created as though they would say, well, that's just the jobs that were lost during the pandemic. And even that wasn't true, because if you remember, they would talk about the jobs that were lost, right? And when the first jobs were lost, they were all hospitality jobs, right? And then not all hospitality jobs, but those were the ones that were hit the worst. And by hospitality jobs, I mean hotels, restaurants, the kind of things where the airlines took some hits. Those were the jobs that were hit the hardest. And then when we came back from the pandemic, those, especially the lower paying jobs, like the hospitality jobs, like the maids in the hotels and the guy at McDonald's and all of those things, those were the ones where when we started coming back from the pandemic, the first ones that were lost were not the first ones to come back. Nobody wanted those jobs. Remember, there was all this stuff about, oh, nobody's taking this job. And there were complaints about, having to wait 4 hours at the drive-through because nobody would come, and, nobody was working there. There was only one person working at the whole McDonald's or whatever. So it's not the same jobs, but that was the media message that went out. Donald Trump would say, well, those were just the jobs that were lost. And then the media would like do a fact check, and they would go, well, this is actually true. They, 15 million jobs were lost, and then 15 million jobs. And so they would discount the jobs that were gained under Biden initially, even though in 2020, nobody thought all of those jobs would be recovered by 2024. And not only that, but another 5 million jobs were added on top of that. And Biden never got credit for that. It was just The whole job market thing, the whole unemployment was just dismissed as, well, that was just preordained. And that kind of message got in people's heads because that's the way that the media presented things, because they were trying to be fair or whatever. But they didn't actually say, that it's more complicated than that, that there's nuance to it. Yes, some of the people that weren't working got jobs, but they didn't get the same jobs. They actually got, most of them were initially, when they were coming back, they were taking these tech jobs. They were taking higher paying jobs. And that's why they weren't going back to McDonald's. They could either get this starter job and a tech job that was from one of, the stimulus packages, or they could go and work with McDonald's again. So of course they didn't want to go back and work with McDonald's again and get yelled at by Karen McCarran and all of that. So they didn't. And it wasn't until later that those jobs started to get filled. At the, those jobs started to get filled like within the last couple of years. So the other thing that didn't get reported was how much wage growth went up. We heard a lot about inflation. Inflation went up 20%. Wage growth went up 26%. So if I told you your bills are going to go up 20% over the next 4 years, but your wages are going to go up 26%, would you take that deal? So you're making, say you're making $100,000 a year and your bills are $80,000 a year, right? So in 4 years, your bills are going to go up 20%. 20% of 80 is 16. So now your bills are 96,000. But your wages went up 26,000. Now now you're making 126,000. Your bills are 96,000. You have $30,000 after your bills versus $20,000 after your bills. Now, would you rather have $30,000 after your bills are paid or $20,000 after your bills are paid? And, some people, it might even be the difference between they weren't able to pay their bills. Now they are. 26 is higher than 20. That's why they're called real wages. They're wages after you adjust for inflation, and real wages went up. And that's not something that the media talked about. They just talked about inflation. They didn't talk about wages. And then when Trump came along and he started talking about his plans and exporting media, or exporting or deporting immigrants. I'm sorry, the theater doc here. If that take were all true, all countries would experience the same recovery, and that's 100% correct. And all countries did not. And the United States, just without question, did better in its recovery from the pandemic than any other country in the world. And without question, while Trump was president, did worse in the pandemic than any other country in the world. And these are just facts that the media should have just made it so that everybody knows these things. And then you get into like the things that Donald Trump was saying about his policy, like, first of all, the mass deportations. So here's the thing about mass deportation. They are really going to cripple the economy if he goes through with them. It's going to have a devastating effect on the economy. It's going to hurt, obviously, food prices. Nearly 50% of our produce is harvested by undocumented workers. It's going to affect our milk prices. As much as 50% of our milk is cows are milked by undocumented workers. And I had somebody say sometime, we got milk machines. And it's like, of course we have milk machines. But who do you think works the milk machines? Do you think that they just work themselves? They're little robots and they just milk the cows all by themselves? No, you need people to work the milk machines. And it's the dairy industry that is saying, we're going to, Who's going to milk our cows? That's a quote from somebody in the air, like a leader in the dairy industry. And then you've got, so then you look at that, and it's like, it's not just milk, it's cheese, it's, ice cream, it's all of those things. Everything that's dairy is going to go through the roof. And when you look at these things, you can't just like go, okay, we're going to lose half our dairy. Because let's say that you own a dairy farm, right? And you lose half of your workers. And so you can't, get the same amount of milk. You got the cows though, right? You got to pay for the cows. You got to pay for their food. You got to, like your costs, other than labor, of course, your costs did not go down, but you're losing the top part of your income. So let's say you were making, 20% of your profit, or of your net income, or of your gross income with your net income. Like the top 20%, that was your profit. That's what you lived on. Well, you lose half your workers, you lose all of that. You do not have enough money to support yourself off your dairy farm anymore. So now it's not just you lose that money, you literally lose the farm. And, the same with the produce workers. So it's not like you're just going to lose half your dairy. We're going to lose a significantly higher percentage than that. There might be some that can survive, but it's going to just kill a lot of farms. It's going to kill, strawberry farms. It's going to kill grape farms. It's going to kill wine farms. It's going to kill dairy farms. And then it's also, like, I think it's 40% of people that work in meat packing plants. So you're not going to have any more vegetables. You're not going to have any more fruit. You're not going to have any more dairy. You're not going to have any more beef. So your hamburgers that you like to complain about, that the Democrats are going to take away, actually, everything that goes on your hamburger, except for the bun, is going to be taken away by Donald Trump, like deporting all the undocumented workers. But nobody talked about that. Why is it? There was only one report before the election that really looked at this. Why was this not something that was, just like with Biden and inflation? It was just, people had just been around the news enough that they just kind of got this impression, and it was just like permeated knowledge. It just they had just barely heard enough stuff that it penetrated, and it's just osmosis knowledge. And we don't have that. Like, we didn't have that with what Trump was saying. And so then you've got on top of, so what you're going to have is, not only are you going to have tremendous inflation, you're also going to have food scarcity. And who is that going to affect first? Is the poor people, right? Because there's already people that live in food deserts. Well, how much worse are those food deserts going to be when there's not food? So then you have, it's not just food. I think, there's this false impression that people have that most undocumented workers are working in the fields. That's not actually true. Only 6% of undocumented workers work in the fields. They make up 50% of the people that work in fields, but only 6% of undocumented workers work in the fields. 40% of them actually work in the construction industry. And right now, one of our biggest issues is not it's that we don't have enough people working in the construction industry, and there's a housing shortage. And so, like, if you look at what happened in Florida when Ron the White Shoes Santis decided to kick everybody out, what happened is it just killed the economy. And especially when you got to rebuild every 6 months over there because of all the hurricanes. And he basically deported the entire construction workforce. Did not work out well. Well, that's not going to work out well in Texas. That's not going to work out well in Arizona. It's not going to work well anywhere where there's population growth. And it's not going to work anywhere where there's a housing shortage. Who's going to build the houses if you deport all the construction workers? And then if you do that, what's going to happen to the price of housing? It's going to continue to go up. And this is another thing that voters said they cared about. This was like they blamed Joe Biden for the price of housing going up. But the reason the price of housing going up was that there was a housing shortage. And Kamala Harris actually had a plan to address that shortage. Donald Trump never said anything about it. And the media never, ever addressed that. Like they never said, what is Donald Trump going to do about the housing shortage? You know, he's got these, I'm going to build new cities. It's like, well, how? You know, and they treat these things that he just says off the cuff as though, you know, like they're just a foregone. Oh, he's gonna build a new city. Like how? How is he going to build? Why aren't you asking him that question? So the media doesn't actually try and inform anymore. What it tries to do is it tries to entertain. And it tries to get, it solicits anger. And Donald Trump is really good at that. And the Republicans are really good at that. The Democrats are trying to solicit reason. And anger and reason, if it comes down between anger and reason, anger is going to win every single time. And if you're married, just be honest. You're in an argument with your spouse. And then somewhere in that argument, you're already mad, right? You're mad. And then at some point you realize your spouse is right. The reason the reason hits you, right? And you're like, okay, yeah, she's right. And so what do? You double down on the anger. Like that just makes you even madder. So like reason never has a chance against anger. And anger is like, people like being angry. Like that's why they watch Fox News. There's a type of, that's why they click on rage bait. It's like anger makes you feel righteous. Anger makes you feel good. Anger makes you feel like, yes, I'm the good guy. They're the bad guy. And so they're like, anger sells. You know what doesn't sell? Logic, reason, nice, cool, passionless understanding of things. And, you know, with today's modern media and being online, it's like where everything is just about whether or not you click. Because if you click, the advertisement show. If the advertisement show, the webpage gets paid. People try doing alternatives like subscriptions. Nobody wants to pay for news. They don't want to pay to be angry. They just want to be angry. They want to be angry for free. Anger is like the #1 entertainment industry these days. Nobody will admit it. But man, people like being pissed off. That's why Rush Limbaugh was so popular. That's why Alex Jones is popular. Not because they say things that are true and they elucidate things and you're like, oh, I feel so enlightened for having heard what I just said. No, they're just like, oh, feminazis, I hate feminazis. You know, and they're angry and they want to be angry. And because they want to be angry, they listen. And then because they listen, Rush Limbaugh sold advertisements and got syndicated all over the country. I think that means you agree with me, right? So, oh, sorry, you got it. Will they be shoved through the gates to Mexico? This is actually a really good question about the deportations, which is, I think, another thing. He says he's going to deport them back to the countries they came from. But in order to deport somebody back to the country they came from, you have to have a treaty with them. And one thing that people don't realize is that while Biden was president, and Kamala Harris was actually the one that was responsible for most of this, they worked out like 43 new treaties with countries to deport people to. And so now it's 170 countries. So you would hear Trump say, oh, they're coming from 170 countries. Well, they're not. The reason he would say 170 countries, they're coming from 170 countries, is that Harris was the one that negotiated to be able to work out treaties so that they could deport people to them. So you say, well, just deport them anyway. So, you know, I think, what is it? Argentina, or, you know, there's a South American country. I can't remember which one. There's a country in South, I think it's, I want to say Argentina, doesn't have an agreement with us to deport people back to. So you can't just send them to another country. You can't just say, okay, Brazil, it's your problem. We're going to send them to you. Because what if Brazil decided they were going to start sending all the people it was deporting to the U.S.? Would we just be like, oh, that's cool? You know, we'd be like, if you want to deport Americans back to here, then that's fine. But why should we take, you know, Hondurans? And then Brazil's like, well, the same to us. Why should we take another country's illegal immigrants? So you have to actually have a treaty. And you say, well, what happens if you don't have a treaty and you just send them anyway? Well, if you don't have a treaty and you send them anyway, they just don't let the plane land. You know, this is the thing that Donald Trump never seems to quite figure out, is that other countries also have sovereign rights, and you can't just tell other countries what to do, because they can just say no. And so, again, this is another thing that the media is now beginning to ask, and the media is asking these questions now, but it's kind of too late. These are the questions they should have been asked before. So, is it no or no way? Noe? I don't. I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong. NOE says slavery coming back to America via forced labor. I hear this comparison a lot. I don't agree with that, actually. This is not forced labor. It's voluntary. Unless what you mean by that, there are some people that are speculating that what they're going to do is they're going to put all these people in these you know, immigration camps, and these immigration camps are going to actually, they're going to force them to go into the fields and harvest the food, and, you know, do the construction and stuff like that. So yeah, in the camps, and that is possible. But even like, if that were the case, the cost of that, like the cost of these camps, is going to be outrageous. That's something else. Another thing that nobody asked. Like, why wasn't the media asking these questions before? Like, I do not understand. These were questions I had. You know, and you know, that's why it's some people speculate it's like it's going to end up costing like $1 trillion for every $1 million, or for every million for every million immigrants you deport, it could cost $1 trillion. So that's like adding another $11 trillion to the debt. And then while you're talking about doing that, you're also talking about, you're contracting the economy. It's not growing, it's shrinking. And when the economy shrinks, you collect less revenue. And when you collect less revenue, that means that you don't, it's just like if you got a pay cut. if you got a 20% pay cut, your bills stay the same, right? And so what happens? Your credit card bills end up going up because you don't have enough money to pay for your bills anymore. So this is what is going to happen. But then you're also jacking up the price of your bills. So you're going to have the price, you're going to have the debt going up, you're going to have prices going up, you're going to have unemployment going up. And because when you deport people, when you like I was saying earlier, the businesses shut down. It's not just, oh, we're going to go out and get Americans to do the jobs. You're like, this business is untenable now, and so they shut the whole thing. So there's they've done historical tracking on this, and for every million undocumented workers you deport, you're going to lose 80,000 American jobs. So if you deport 12 million immigrants, that's another million American jobs that you've lost. And so unemployment is going to go up, prices are going to go up, the national debt is going to go up, and then you've got this nonsense about Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to go through, and Vivek in all his brilliance is like, we're tired, no more unelected bureaucrats making these decisions. And it's like, you're literally an unelected bureaucrat making these decisions, Vivek. So, and it's not unelected bureaucrats that have been making these decisions. It's been elected congressmen. That's in the Constitution. That the Constitution says that Congress is who decides who pays money. It's not a couple of billionaires that get to decide what the government is spending money on. They don't get. Who elected you, Vivek? Who elected you, Elon? Nobody did. You're immigrants. And the Constitution clearly says the purse strings comes down to the Congress. Welcome back, Malison. Oh, I'm sorry. Theater Doc. I'm gonna have to ask. I'm sorry. What does your name mean, the Theater Doc? It's actually I know you've been on here a few times, and I've wondered, like, are you a doctor at a theater, or are you like a theater doctor? Like, do you mend theaters? Anyway, U.S. cannot pay the collection, holding, and deporting of millions. We can't. That's what I'm saying. The deficit is going to go, like, the cost of that is unsustainable, and it's ridiculous. And but for those that didn't jump in right from the beginning, my whole beef today is, why didn't the media talk about these things before the election? It's only after the election that you're starting to hear the media talk about these things. And these are things that they should have talked about before the election. Why is it only now that they are talking about these things? These are things that, if just 2% of people that heard this would have voted different, actually only 1%, because if it would have been the 1%, a 1% change in mind would be a 2% difference in the votes. So if only 1 out of 100 people said, you know what, this makes sense, I'm going to vote for Harris instead of Trump. If that had happened, then we would not be talking about a second Trump term right now. So where was the media? Where was the media? There was a tiny bit on MSNBC. CNN said nothing. But I don't watch CNN. I think CNN is garbage. Fox News just acted like this was the greatest plan in the history of the universe. Where was the media asking these questions? Asking about, well, okay, if you deport all the undocumented immigrants, what's going to happen to the economy? Where are we going to get our food? Where are we going to get our food? Where are we going to get our houses? And then, and it's also not, the other thing is, if you deport all these undocumented workers, you're actually taking away more revenue from the government, because a lot of, I think it was like it's $2 or $3 trillion, I forget. They pay a lot of money, because a lot of them, they either have what is called an EID, which is like an immigration equivalent to a social security number, or they have fake social security numbers, because like they have to like they have to give their employers something, right? So they have these fake social security numbers, and they pay into social security their whole lives, but they never collect anything. And so they pay taxes, they pay social security, but they never get anything back. So that there's this Republican notion that they're getting all this stuff from the government, but they're not paying in. It's actually the other way around. Most of them are paying in far more than they're ever going to get out. And now we're going to lose that revenue too, as well as the like the value of their labor. And so we're going to have our GDP shrink and our deficit go up, and we're going to have our food supply go down, and our food prices go up, and our housing supply go down, and our housing prices go up. And that's just the immigration side of things. Then you add on to that the tariffs, which is going to increase all imported prices across the board. So you say, okay, we're not going to have as much domestic food, we'll just import it. Well, okay, but you're going to pay more for those imports too. So if you think inflation was bad under Biden, talk to me in 4 years. If we still even have an economy, it's like we have not even begun to really explore and consider just the damage, the absolute damage Donald Trump is going to do to this economy. It's going to be devastating. Like, I'm just saying, if you have, like, do what you can to secure yourself. Like I'm doing stuff, like I'm canning foods and stuff like that, because it's going to get a lot worse. And then you got Elon Musk in there going, oh, it's going to get worse before it gets better, and all of this stuff. It's like, what difference is it going to make to you, Elon? Like, Elon Musk telling me to bite the bullet makes me want, that is just offensive. Yeah, Elon, you want me to bite the bullet, huh? Yeah. Like, what is your sacrifice, Elon? You just Elon Musk bought Twitter to jam Trump through, and he lost $40 billion. It was $44 billion when he bought it. It's worth $4 billion now. And it makes no difference at all to his lifestyle. Like, there is not one thing he can't do now that he could do then. And he's going to tell us he lost 40. I mean, imagine losing $40 billion and it makes no difference to your life. And now this man, he got $13 billion from the US government. He's going to go through and he's going to start taking away people's Medicare. He's going to start taking away people's Social Security. And, because we need to bite the bullet. Like, what on earth? Like, we're going to have all these prices going up, and we're going to be taking away foods, we're going to take away people's SNAP benefits. We're going to be taking away their Medicare. We're going to be taking away their Social Security. The hungriest, SNAP benefits, 75% of SNAP recipients are children. You're literally taking away food from children. And what are you going to do? You're also going to cut taxes for billionaires again. You're giving the billionaires more money, and the children going hungry is the sacrifice, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. Like, am I the only one this pisses off? Where was the media? Where was the media? Like, when I was a kid, when I was in high school, back in the 80s and 90s, I remember the like back before the internet, and when we were like looking at actual newspapers, they would have every time before the election, they would have these kind of things. Where are they on the issues? And there would be like laid out, there would be two columns. Anybody that's, like Gen X or probably even millennial probably remembers this. And you would run down the list and it would say, immigration, and it would say, this is this person's stance and this is this person's stance. And you might even have somebody, objectively try to review everybody's policies, and then the paper would give an endorsement based on that. And yeah, exactly. Mallison hits it right on the head. Trump didn't even have plans. He had concepts of a plan. Who had a plan was the Federalists, or whatever. I forget. I get them mixed up. But the Project 2025, that was the plan, and it still is the plan. But Donald Trump said, "Well, I don't know what that is," as though Donald Trump denies he knows what that is, so it must not be true. And it's like, we know damned well that it's true. Like, all but like 4 of the writers used to work with Donald Trump. So it's not like there's this mystery of whether or not he's really, knows what's going on with it. Of course he knows what's going on with it. He's too lazy to come up with policy. Why should he come up with policy? Project 2025 is right there. And everything he's talking right now about doing is straight out of Project 2025. Heck, he's even making the writer of Project 2025 part of his administration. And so, where was the media? Where was the media? That's the thing. Where was the media through all of this? Why wasn't the media asking about how is he going to do the mass deportation? Why wasn't the media asking about the cost of mass deportations? Why wasn't the media asking about the impact of mass deportations on our food, on our housing? Why wasn't the media asking about the cost of these tariffs? Why wasn't the media asking about what the tariffs were going to do for prices? Why wasn't the media asking about, this kind of massive cutting and slashing of social programs? Where was the media? Like, in some ways, it pisses me off that Donald Trump is Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump pisses me off. He will always and forever piss me off. But I'm not if I were a frog and I gave the ride to the scorpion on my back and he bit me and he's like, well, what am I going to do? I'm a scorpion. I'd be like, yeah, I'm a stupid frog. Let's just drown. And like that, if you trust Donald Trump, that's on you. When the scorpion bites you, that's on you, because you should know better. But the media was supposed to do their job. The entire Fourth Estate failed us. They just failed us completely. They never asked the questions. They never reported the facts. What they did is try to entertain. They sold anger. They sold frustration. They sold clicks. They were more about the advertising than anything else. And then when it came down to, in the endorsements, and you had people like Bezos and what's his name? They wouldn't even endorse. They were cowards. And, I'm not talking about the people that, the actual journalists that wanted to endorse Harris, but like Bezos is a coward. He's a chicken shit little coward. And, I blame them and the Los Angeles Times guy too. I can't think of his name, but they're not scorpions. They're cowards. They weren't working in their nature. Well, unless their nature is cowards. But then they shouldn't be buying the newspapers if they're cowards. I mean, the ignorance. It's like I said at the beginning of this broadcast, if you weren't here, I had a teacher for a how to study class. And she said, if a student fails, it's the student's fault. If the class fails, it's the teacher's fault. If just a few people didn't know what was happening and were uninformed, that's their fault. But when most of the population of the country has no idea what's going on, that's the media's fault. That's the entire Fourth Estate's fault. And there are some, I'm not saying everyone. You know, Midas Touch and the people that worked there, they tried. There were a few people on MSNBC, Stephanie Rule, Mehdi Hassan when he was there, Rachel Maddow, Lawrence O'Donnell. Most of the primetime lineup, they did okay. Most of the afternoon lineup was just worthless. There was the one that used to campaign for Bush. She was good. I can't think of her name right now. I'm bad about recalling names sometimes, but you know who I'm talking about. She used to be Bush's campaign manager. She like the White House show. Yeah, and definitely Midas Touch with all of the guys that are on Twitter, and now they're on Blue Sky too. But you know what I'm saying, right? Like those are kind of niche. Like if you're a political nerd, you know who these people are. But just Bob the plumber or whatever, the guy that works at a blue collar job, works his ass off. He's tired. He has to drive through Chicago traffic or Houston traffic or whatever. So he's like got 2 or 3 hours of driving a day because he's got to go to different houses. He comes home. He's got he's got to help his kids with their math homework, and he's exhausted. He's not going to sit there and he's not going to watch news where you actively have to think. If he watches news at all, he's going to watch news that is as passive as can be, which Fox News is great for that. They do all their thinking for you. They do all your thinking for you, and they just sell you anger. So it's like it's the easiest, most guttural response you can get, right? You don't have to think. They just sit there and they say, the reason you're so tired right now, it's all the immigrants' fault. It's all Joe Biden's fault. It's all the Democrats' fault. You're not to blame. The Republicans aren't to blame. It's all everybody else's fault. Vote Donald Trump. And that's, and they get all upset. And, because they've been told. They're good little Muppets, and they do what they're told, and they get angry at the Democrats. And I don't know the solution because you can't really change people's nature. Like you can't make his job easier. You can't make his commute easier. He's going to come home the same way. He's still going to watch Fox News. And no matter how good Midas Touch is or Rachel Maddow is, he's never going to hear those guys. So the only thing I can think of is just it's got to get to the osmosis thing. It's the if it's everywhere, it's like just the 10-minute news update on the radio channel they listen to, where it's just instead of hearing about how inflation is Joe Biden's fault, they just hear inflation is because of the supply chain issues. And it started under Donald Trump. Like we need to get the media back to actually reporting the news instead of trying to sell controversy. And I'm not talking about the cable news, just the cable news. I'm talking about like network news and all of that. Like we need to get back to a fact-based discussion right now, and I don't know how to do that. Like I really don't. I've been thinking about it. I keep thinking about it. I don't know what to do, but I'm open to suggestions. And I mentioned this before. I'm going to be trying to get have conversations on with teachers and professors and nurses and doctors about like the real world, because I think there is. That's like why Joe Rogan is popular, because he just has conversations about people. They're not politically charged. They're just, tell me about this. They're conversation. He's a conversationalist. He's not a journalist. He's not a reporter. He's a conversationalist, and that's why he never pushes back, because he's not trying to. So he has, the nut jobs on. Why can't we just have like conversations with real people that are not nut jobs? So like tomorrow, if you're available, I've got an abortion doctor coming on, and we're just going to have a conversation. We're just going to talk. We're going to talk about abortion. Why? Actually, I'm kind of curious why he chose this profession, because it's not like, I don't think most people grow up going, yeah, I want to be an abortion doctor. But I appreciate that he is one, because in this day and age, they're fewer and farther between. And abortions are necessary. And I think that we need to have more conversations even with people that got abortions, like some that were medically necessary and some that were not medically necessary. And I think that like the whole idea of while I agree that Ghost Cup, if while I agree that there is a need for the discussion about medically necessary abortions, I think that there's been a sort of in having that discussion, we've sort of deferred or what's the word I'm looking for? Like the idea of, I want an abortion because I don't want a baby right now. Like deciding to have an abortion because you're a sophomore in college and you've got the rest of your life ahead of you, and you don't want a one night stand to dictate the rest of your life. You should be able to get an abortion. You should not have that one thing destroy the rest of your life. And men don't have that decision. Whoever she had the one night, she might not even remember his name. He may never even know, but she will know. Like the guys always joke, you have any kids? None that I know about. That's not a joke. Who doesn't have any kids they know about, or they don't know about? Women. Never met a woman make that joke. Never heard a woman make that joke. You know why? They know about it, and it changes their lives. And so they should not have to have their lives changed for something that the man does not. And I think that's a discussion we need to also be able to have. Like, just abortion by choice, that should be a right too. It should not only be, oh, it's to save the life of the mother. And it should be absolutely to save the life of the mother, but it should also be to save the life of the mother that is ahead of her, if you know what I mean. Like, they should have that choice. And choice also means you can choose. Some people would be like, I want to keep the baby. This was not something. And that's a choice too. And that's perfectly legal and perfectly valid. And they make it sound like if you're pro-choice, you're pro-abortion. No, it's pro-choice for a reason. It means that the woman should be able to decide what she does with her own body. That's all it means. And nobody else should make that decision for her. Nobody. Ever. So anyway, I feel like we don't have the right conversations. All the conversations are from the Republican conservative perspective, and the media has those conversations from that perspective. They don't have the we need to move the conversation back into a more central position. And I think we've, like, they act like, oh, like everybody moved, the Democrats moved to the left. We didn't move to the left. Oh my God, we just elected somebody that's a Nazi. No, it's the Republicans that moved to the right. We did not go anywhere. What? Because, sorry if, like they act like all we did was run on trans people or something like that. No, we didn't. If anything, we should have defended more trans people more. But they ran against trans people. And because, like, we didn't, they're like, their whole theory is we don't hate trans people enough. And it's like, we did not defend trans people enough. Now you've got, the Gestapo, Nancy May or whatever her name is, and Marjorie Taylor Greene threatening to beat up this trans woman if she tries to go pee. Like, they're assholes. What is that? Why are we dealing with that? But we're the extremists. Like, come on. The person in the stall next to you, I would be more weirded out if somebody, like, you ever been in a bathroom, in a public bathroom, and had somebody in the stall next to you inquire as to what your identity is or your gender? Like, that would weird me out. Like, hey, who's in there? And it'd be like, dude, I'm, trying to take a dump here. I'm not trying to have a conversation. That would be weird. And they're like more worried about who it is in the stall next to them. And it's like, who cares if they're trans? And then, okay, so, all right, I'm going to go through and look at some of the comments here because I've been letting them I've been falling behind. So this is about abortion. Even those that want one don't really want one. Yeah, especially when you're talking about the later term abortions. And this is something I'm going to talk to him about. Like, those are tragic consequences. And what they do is they take the most difficult decisions that these women will ever have in their life, and they vilify them for being in the situation. Like I say, nobody chooses a late term abortion. Nobody chooses a late term abortion. It's something that is forced on them, and it is tragic, and it is heartbreaking. And people that try to politicize that are just absolute dicks. I just, I've known women that have had miscarriages late in pregnancy, and they mourn. My brother's wife had a late term miscarriage and couldn't conceive again for 2 years. Finally, they eventually had a son, but it was like a miracle baby. They weren't supposed to be able to get pregnant again. This is like just incredibly personal, real things. And, when you're talking about a miscarriage versus a late term abortion, it's the same thing. It's the baby, either the baby isn't viable or it's going to kill the mom. Those are the only two reasons, like literally the only two reasons. There is not a documented case of a third term abortion that's just, I just wanted one. It doesn't happen. The doctors won't do them. Nurses won't accompany them. Anesthesiologists, which would be necessary, they won't, involve them. Nobody would even do it because it would cost them their medical license. Like, people don't even realize how complicated it is. And even if you have like a late term abortion on a viable infant or on a viable fetus or a non-viable fetus, you have to have a neonatologist in the room just in case the baby survives to provide immediate care to that infant and try to save its life. Like, this idea that, women are just like, well, I was going to have a baby, but I started thinking about it and now I'm not. What they do is they have this thing called late term abortions. Now, late term abortions is not actually a medical term. Late term abortions are an invented term by the pro life community that is after 20 weeks. Third term abortions don't start until 27 weeks. Like actual third term abortions are, so there's a 7-week gap between, late term and third term. Now, there are, I think, the youngest premature baby to ever survive is like 20 weeks and a few days. They're very, very rare that you can save a baby that's younger than 23 weeks. 23 weeks is more or less when you start viability. And that's more or less when abortions stop for choice. Like even like in New York or California, where there's no law against it. And so then people are like, well, why don't you just make that a law? And it's like, the reason there's not a law against late term abortions after 23 weeks is because complications don't stop after 23 weeks. You can have a complication at 28, 29 weeks. And you can find out things like they do tests to see about diseases and stuff, right? And sometimes those tests will come back negative, but then they'll test again after 23 weeks and they'll come back positive. So they found out, oh, this baby is going to have this like very, very, I forget the one, it's a form of Downs that's extremely severe. Like it's not like functional Downs. It's basically, you can survive, but you're never going to speak. You're never going to be able to do anything on your own. You are going to be completely dependent on other people. Like, and you're never going to have like actual thought or anything. You're just basically going to breathe. And like, there was this mom that found out that her kid was going to have that. She had literally just had her home destroyed by a hurricane. She had 5 other children she had to take care of. So how is she going to take care of this, basically living vegetable? And so she wanted to get an abortion, but she was in Florida, so she couldn't. So she has to have this baby. Like, these are real, like actual tragic stories that are extremely sad. Would you want to be in that mom and be in that situation? Like, how are you going to work? How are you going to take care of your 5 children, your 6 children? Like, none of it. And it's like, is somebody going to come and adopt that baby? Like, these are not easy decisions. So, you're absolutely right, Noe, that especially when it comes to these later abortions, these decisions are not easy, and they only should be made by the mother. Joe McKitty, why is there no reporting on Russian war crimes in Ukraine? Exactly. And it's funny because while we heard a lot about the Israeli war crimes in Gaza, and we didn't hear about the Russian war crimes in Ukraine. And you would even hear people say, like, how can you be for Ukraine and also support Gaza? Because actually that's pretty consistent. Both are being bombed into oblivion. Both don't, there's some differences. Ukraine did not invade, Russia and kidnap 2,000 of its citizens and kill a bunch of others. But neither did Gaza, really. Hamas did. And Hamas and Gaza are 2 different entities. And like, there's never enough distinction in the media between those 2 things. There was kind of a vilification of anybody that would support Gaza's rights. I think, there may be some of the people that were protesting. I was never like so much in disagreement with them, but I was like, you're going to cost the election. And they're like, well, genocide. Like, I don't think Joe Biden was actively promoting genocide. I think he was in an extremely difficult situation where, because let's say they had done what Joe Biden had done what they asked. How would the Republicans respond if Joe Biden cut off all weapons to Israel? Like, how would, or even just only gave the Israel enough weapons to defend itself? Well, do you think the Republicans would have been like, okay, well, that's understandable, or would they have, I even as it was, they were trying to make it sound like he was anti-Semitic. They would be calling him an anti-Semite, and you would lose significant amounts of the Jewish vote. And so it's like either you're going to lose part of the Jewish vote or you're going to lose the Palestinian vote. And um, this was one of those, like, basically, I think in a lot of ways, the election was decided on October 7th, 2019. Like, because there was no path. There was no way that from that point, there was no way that Biden could get both the Jewish vote and the Palestinian vote. And, sadly, that's just a reality. But anyway, definitely the way that the media has covered the Ukraine, and the Ukraine war, it's sad. They've allowed this kind of anti-Ukraine war feeling to ferment, and a big part of that is just not covering the fact that there are actual war crimes, and they I think Putin's even been subpoenaed for them, or whatever. Gaslighting is the word since 2016. Yeah, I think that's almost lost its meaning at this point. Gaslighting is, because every time you bring up something like gaslighting, then the Republicans just start to say gaslighting. Oh, they say that the Russian hoax was gaslighting. They say, all the stuff, the indictments, the impeachments were gaslighting. The indictments were, they're not gaslighting. They're gaslighting by saying those things are gaslighting. But then, like, you've always got to look at these things from the perspective of, like, the guy that is just too tired to give a fornication about what's going on, right? He's the guy that I was talking about, the guy that gets home and he's just tired. He's just like, oh, they're all liars. And so, Donald Trump, we were doing okay while he was president, which we weren't, but that's they memory hold what a disaster he was. And so here we are, right? There's some laughy faces there. I don't know what the laughy faces were from, but at least somebody got a laugh. Okay. Oh, trying to take a dump, right? Like, what? How would you feel if, like, you're sitting there and you're just trying to squeeze one out, and then somebody's like, "Hey, who's in there?" I mean, that like Nancy May being the penis police in the bathroom is like, that's the weird thing. Late term abortions were wanted babies. They really were. Yeah, the Republicans, this whole, like, people call them the uh I can't remember. But yeah, basically the only difference is the book they read. Um the Islamic extremists read one book and the Christian extremists pretend they read another book. I don't think they even read it. At least the Islamic extremists read the Quran. Christian extremists don't even read the Bible. People think pregnancy and childbirth is easy peasy. Nope, I agree. Even though when they say like, "Oh well, just put it up for adoption," it's like, well, like that's 9 months out of your life, and it's not an easy 9 months, and it's not like after you squeeze out the baby and you put it up for adoption that you can just you just bounce back. It's not like getting a cold. It's like it's a major impetus to your life versus why can't you just take a couple of pills in the morning, Um yeah, I'm thinking with yeah. I've thought about this 6 ways to Sunday, and I do not know how you could have handled that situation properly. And I think making Joe Biden responsible for a conflict that is 2,000 years old is just stupid. He's old, but he's not that old. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Exactly. Lose-lose situation. Okay, so a lot of you are agreeing. What Kamala correctly called Trump a fascist. Trump instantly and incorrectly called Kamala a communist. Yes, and that is the other thing is the way that you've heard they've been calling Democrats communists for years, since Reagan. Reagan was well, in Reagan, Republicans were calling Walter Mondale a communist. As far back as I remember, I was could have been before that, but yeah, they loved it. Well, actually, with Joe McCarthy, they were calling Democrats communists. They've been yelling about communism, for 80 years. And I always say, to some degree, I think there was this episode of Friends one time that I always think of. And if you ever saw the episode where Joey wins the sailboat, he gets the sailboat. There was like a silent auction, and he wins the sailboat, but he doesn't know how to sail. And so Rachel is going to teach him how to sail because remember she grew up rich, and so she's teaching Joey how to sail, and he keeps doing stuff wrong, and then she yells at him one too many times, and he's like, "I quit." And then Rachel gets really, really mad at him, and she's like, "You're a green, and greens don't quit." And Joey's like, "I'm a Triviani, and Triviani's quit." And then like Rachel realizes that she's acting like her dad, and then she's like, "Oh no, I've been trying so hard to not be my mom. I've become my father." And and yeah, Noe remembers it. And so she and I think that in a lot of ways we've been trying so hard to not be communist, we've become fascist. And we've shut our eyes to what fascism is and what fascism means. And I actually, if you haven't seen it yet, I'll link it into the uh, aftermath. After I'm done with this, I'll link it into the comment section of this. But I did a whiteboard video on "Is Donald Trump a fascist?" that talks about what fascism is and how he actually is an actual fascist. Like, I'm not being hyperbolic when I say he's a fascist. He is a fascist. He's talking about literal concentration camps, and he he's like this father figure. I mean, everything about like this is fascism. This is what we have become. We are now a fascist country. And people can get mad. Oh, well, what is fascist? And it's like, well, that's why I did the video, because I got so tired of people saying, well, what's a fascist then? Define fascist. And it's like, this is fascism. And so anyway, if you haven't watched that, video. Theater Doc says it's a good video. Thank you. But you know, we are fascists. That's just. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not exaggerating. Like, if you look at what fascism is, we are absolutely a fascist country now, and we voted to be one. You know, and the people that killed the Nazis would be rolling over in their graves. I'm glad that most of them aren't around to see what we've become. So anyway, anybody have any questions or any comments they want to chime in with here before I end today? Thanks for joining. I appreciate it when you guys leave comments, so I'm not just feeling like I'm rambling incoherently here. All right, so you guys ready? You guys want to hear a since it is a called the Punch Show, I'll leave you with does Blue Sky have a? It does not. I'm hoping that someday. I've heard it's going to, but here's the thing: is right now, I think I don't know if okay. I put the link on Blue Sky. Okay, no, I think you have to link on it and then come over to YouTube. Here's the deal: as I mean, just so you guys know, my I got laid off November 10th, 2019, and then I got another job, and this one was like I had to actually go into the office, and so then I started going into the office. I got COVID within like 4 months, and that was my first time getting COVID. And then after I got COVID, I got long COVID, and I just did not have the energy to do anything. I have one lung, and so it was like hard enough. And so I just can't do the in-office thing again and get COVID again. Like I'm lucky I didn't die the first time. So the only income I was making was off of being monetized on X. So right now, I'm not going to be making very much money on X because I have just decided my conscience, I can't deal with that. So I'm trying to get monetized on YouTube. So I'm about halfway there. So at least Blue Sky, when I post videos on Blue Sky and people watch them, then it counts towards my YouTube hours. And I need to get to 4,000 hours. I'm getting close to 2,000. But it's been a lot easier since I started posting them on Blue Sky, because on Blue Sky, people can just click on it and play it. So anyway, right now I'm just trying to get monetized on YouTube. If I get monetized on YouTube, I think I can, at least, make a living off of that. So, but just that's where I'm at. And so Blue Sky might end up being a blessing. And even in that, like sometimes you think you're making a sacrifice and it ends up not being a sacrifice, because I think like I'm already over the most. Before the exodus happened, I was at 85,000 followers on Twitter. Now I'm at like 73,000 on Twitter, and I'm at 92,000 on Blue Sky. So it's going to be a couple of months to get up to where I'm monetized on YouTube. But once I'm monetized on YouTube, I think I'll be making more money than I was making with X. So anyway, might end up working out better for me in the long run. But anyway, if you guys see my videos, give them a retweet on Blue Sky, or a skeet, I guess. Is that what you would call it? If it's a skeet, would it be a reskeet? There's puns involved. So speaking of which, since this is called the Pun Show, I'll leave you with the Thanksgiving pun. Why did the turkey walk down the middle of the road? To prove he wasn't a chicken. Get it? Prove he wasn't a chicken. He's walking down the middle of the road instead of crossing the road. All right. Anyway, that's your terrible pun of the day. So anyway, I'll see you around on Blue Sky. and not on Twitter. Appreciate you guys sticking around and interacting with me. So, all right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.